whether you know this or not. At this point, our former chair,
Perhaps it would be best to do these things under item 3.
that's a while, oh, okay, we can do that. All right, let's do that. All right, let's call the meeting to order at whatever time it is, which is 1:03. Is that all right, Mary? Yeah. Then I need a motion to approve the minutes from the December 16th meeting of 2021. Anybody want to make a motion to do that?
So moved.
Okay, any second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, passed unanimously, all right. Then under new business, there we go, this is item 3. At this point, as far as I know, Calvin Dexter is recusing himself from deliberations concerning the case that has been presented to us, and that Mary Tao has, at this point, resigned from the committee. For whatever reason, she is not going to serve. And so we will need, at some point, a replacement. So that reduces the size of not the board. I keep calling it a committee. So I don't know if that's any other news that people have that they want to share as relevant to this.
So are you taking over as chair?
Thank you. That's the other thing I need to announce, that as vice chair, it is my duty to take over as chair. I don't think we can, as long as our further meetings deal with this case, it would seem to me we can't replace me yet or make me permanent, either, whatever. I think that as long, I think we need the whole board, and especially if there's going to be a new member, it would really be advantageous to have the whole board voting on who is chair and who's vice chair. I mean, that would be my understanding. Do you have any, does that sound okay to you, or is it?
It sounds fine to me.
Okay. Yeah, it's not exactly a job I want, but I'll deal with this. Okay. I'm the acting chair, right, exactly. My guess is I'll be the acting chair for whatever further meetings deal with just this case, and after that, we can take care of that. Yeah.
You all got the email where I gave my reasons for abstaining or recusing from this particular case, and the reason, in short, is because I had already begun circulating nomination papers for Will Harris for judge. By the time I received the complaint and knew that that's what this was going to be about, it just seems like it furthers the purposes of the Ethics Board as stated in the ordinance for me to step away from being involved in this. I'm not resigning from the board.
Right, thank you.
And it might be best for me to go have a seat in the audience now, since I'm not going to be participating in this particular, the proceedings relating to this particular complaint.
Using the microphone when you speak.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Usually in these circumstances, the person who recuses simply leaves.
Well, that may be, but I have questions about whether that impacts the committee's ability to continue to act, or the board's ability, since in my reading of the ordinance says that you need to have 4 members here in order to act.
Well,
And as a member of the public, I'm very interested in this. I mean,
It's entirely your decision, sir,
Yeah.
not, I just wanted to suggest.
and there are other matters, I think, that we need to address that's sort of outside the allegations and the complaint specifically. My next question is if Mary has officially resigned, whether we need to have another member appointed by the mayor. And so those are the type of matters that I think Attorney Dexter can weigh in on.
Is there any way to put those matters in front before we consider matters particularly to this case?
We can talk, I would think we would speak to this when we get to item 4. We can probably, that's why I put that on the.
Oh, general procedure.
Yeah.
So, under new business, discussion possible action on any issue board member wants to bring before the board that relates to code of ethics, that would seem a more general consideration than any item particular to this case. And that, yeah, it doesn't look like till we get to 5 that it would be necessary
I'll tell him.
for Calvin to,
Mr. Chair,
yeah,
if I may, Tom Neal, Alderperson, District 4, going on 8 years on council. And the question of abstaining or recusing, at least when it comes to council or committee business, is pretty well indicated in city statutes or standards of operation, that unless a person has a direct pecuniary interest in whatever is before the body, money or job, that sort of thing, that might be coming back to them as a result of whatever is being discussed, then if that's not the case, the person is expected to participate and vote. So your ability to recuse yourself is pretty narrowly defined in city guidelines. If you're not directly affected in a pecuniary, financial way or something like that, you are expected. It's not really like up to you to say, well, I just don't want to. So that pretty much, that is the standard by which our city government operates. Now, I don't know if this body is governmental or quasi-governmental or whatnot, but that just as a guideline to you, I would at least put that out there, that is the standard that we work by. Also, I just want to state again to the gentleman sitting at the front there, this is all going online and it's all being recorded. You must use your microphone every time you speak for the record, otherwise it's not getting picked up. And a gentleman, the engineer, just came up and was going to say the same thing. So we all have to use our microphones when we're addressing each other.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
okay. Is that,
If Mr. Neal could cite the provisions of the city code that he's referring to, I'd find that helpful. And it doesn't have to be now, but if you could locate that and get it.
Sure. Yeah, no, I don't have it off the top of my head, but this is something that I have talked with City Attorney Jacobson with on more than one occasion, and not just with regards to myself, but also when other people were, abstaining from voting and whatnot, and we would go and revisit, our standards, and it's very clearly outlined there that you need to have some sort of personal gain that's hanging in the balance, some personal relationship that can come back to benefit you, because it's a very small town, and we've all had to vote on things that involve people that we know, people that are even friends. Downtown businesses, we'd have to vote on, giving them this or that, provision that's a new allowance to do something downtown. We can't just say, oh, I know that person, therefore I abstain.
No,
That's
no.
just not the way it works. So,
Mr. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Well, the gain could be a gain that if I'm promoting someone for a political office, I would feel a personal gain from that person getting that office. That doesn't count? Is
I
that-
would say that does not count, and I'm
But I
not
mean-
I'm not a lawyer by any
Right, I know.
stretch.
See, that's the difficulty,
Attorney
because-
Jacobson would certainly clear this up if she were available, either on the phone or if somebody wanted to contact her upstairs if she's here. But no, it has to be something tangible.
Well, okay, I'm gonna have to read that, because I do think there's another thing that I would be inclined to do myself is if I'm getting some kind of gain that may or not be, like my wife at one point was coming up for tenure, and I was on the committee. It didn't necessarily affect how much money we made. It's possible. But I got myself off that committee. I recused myself. Now, that would have violated, that's university law, so it may not apply.
Sure.
but
Yeah.
that wouldn't apply to city law? I mean,
Right,
I find it
that's-
strange. I mean, I would say that's a very odd thing to me. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah,
But
and I think that
cannot recuse myself because I would have an interest in, say, Mr. Harris winning, or would have an interest in Ms. Ryan winning, you know.
Right.
I might have, as long as I have an interest in it, does it have to be financial?
You know, because if you take that logic and you extend it any one of 100 different ways, you can find that any issue that comes before council or before a committee, you know, could have an item on your agenda that is of interest to you, that you have a side that you would like to see taken on it, an end that you would like to see happen. That's what representative government is all about, you know. And you can't just say, well, I have to step down because I have a personal feeling about this. Because this is city government, this is our city. So because of that, that's why the city guidelines that are, again, I'm sorry, I don't have them here to read them to you, clearly state, though, that it has to be for a reason of personal gain. You know, something like money, the potential of a job, you know, that sort of thing,
Yeah, but-
that really
but
directly
potential of a
affects
job
you.
might not have to do with money. It might have to do with a job that I want. So
Yeah, it
that's
could be money,
already
it
a
could be
gain.
property, it
Right.
could be favor
Yeah.
of some sort.
Well,
So-
okay, this is very interesting. I was just, but it does raise a lot of questions.
Would you like me to go upstairs and see if Attorney Jacobson is here? And I could see if she might be able to come down and clarify. I think it's an important
Okay.
point, especially given your current chemistry on, you know, number of
Right.
people on
Right,
on
right,
your
right,
on your
right.
board.
And-
What are you in favor of that, Calvin?
Well, Doug, I didn't make this decision lightly at
Right,
all.
right.
I realize we have a small board. I realize the references in the ordinance to how many people need to be here for us to be able to act. And I did not make this decision lightly at all.
Sure.
I would like to see either a legal opinion from either Attorney Wiskowski or Attorney Jacobson, based on the city ordinances that you're referring to, the
Right.
city code.
I'd be happy to go up there right now and see if she's available. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, and I just have a few more, I would have a couple more questions just about your ability and whether you should recuse yourself, Calvin, is whether you were employed at the same time at all with Judicare, with the complainant, and then obviously some of the witnesses would be your former boss.
Yes, that's correct. I worked, the 2 years I worked at Wisconsin Judicare, Will Harris was also an attorney at Wisconsin Judicare, and Beth Ann Richland was my supervisor at Wisconsin Judicare, and she, of course, has provided an affidavit. So those are, you know, those are relevant facts. But as for a board member not being able to recuse unless they have some financial interest, I wonder if Ms. Ryan was my sister, for example, would the rest of the board feel it's appropriate, or would the city laws feel it's appropriate for me to continue to sit on
It's a fair
a
enough
complaint
question.
like this? So I would like some more direction.
If I may, the city policies, I'm sure encourage everyone to participate to the fullest extent possible.
Right.
And you're describing that the city makes that clear. However, the decision to recuse is always a personal decision, completely within the control of the person who is making the decision. So no one can be forced not to recuse, or penalized, or punished for exercising a recusal. The city, as you described, said, you know, a lot of us know each other, and we got to recognize that. Let's try to participate as much as we can. However, if someone in good conscience says, I really shouldn't be doing this, then that's that.
I guess my question to Ms. Voss and Dr. Hosler is if you all actually have an opinion. I mean, Calvin's recusal was, as he mentioned, well thought about, right? He didn't take it lightly. I mean, he's put his decision in writing. I didn't come here looking to argue with with that decision. And I'm wondering, but nevertheless, since the topic has come up, if you, Ms. Voss, have an opinion and you think you want to support Calvin's decision, and Dr. Hosler, if you think you want to support Calvin's decisions for whatever's in your mind that you haven't articulated.
Yeah, absolutely. I support Attorney Dexter's position and his recusal, and I think it's appropriate if that's what he wants to do.
I guess I'm in the position where I'd like to get a reading of the statute, but I think in the long run, what he was doing sounded fair to me. It was, I mean, there, you know, I could see doing it on lighter things. But I think that you're saying the council, I mean, it doesn't want people who are just uncomfortable to take themselves off.
Correct.
Right.
It basically states, and I'm not, I'm paraphrasing, I guess, but basically states you are expected to vote.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
unless, and then the unless is pretty narrow. It doesn't really address questions of comfort. It really addresses questions of gain.
I think then, Mr. Neal, I think it'd be helpful if we, just to sort of put a period at the end of this conversation, we could,
Right.
we could see it, and then we could have the city's attorney actually
Sure.
say, but I mean, I tend to think that Attorney Dexter's opinion is sort of, or decision rather, is made, and I'm in full support of his decision.
Well, whatever you all want to do, I guess I had to bring it forward because
Yeah, okay.
So-
Fine. I would be interested in your reading of that. It's-
I can go and try and get the attorney,
No,
city attorney, or we
okay.
can just let it lie.
Would that be all right with the members here?
I would like to hear more on this,
Okay.
quite frankly.
Okay.
Like I said, the decision was not made lightly. I feel a responsibility to the
Right.
board and our mission under the ordinance. And if there is more direction, and I think you might remember at the last meeting, I was kind of looking for some direction. Do we have any existing rules? Is
Right.
there anything that might make,
Right.
because I had this in the back of my mind, of course, at the last
Yeah,
meeting, and
right.
if there's more to be heard on it, I'm interested in hearing it.
Yeah,
Want me what?
right, sure.
I'm not trying to recuse myself because I feel
Right.
I'm uncomfortable. I'm trying to do the right thing under the policies behind the board itself, so.
Because, go ahead, yeah. The other thing that we might think about is it's an ethics board, we might hold ourselves to higher standards in terms of bias. Rather than, because the city, I noticed in the original document that the ordinance that creates this committee is an enormous amount of effort on personal gain, merely financial in some ways. It's almost all conflict of interest. In fact, I think the objection that Mr. Harris raises was hard for him to find. There was only one feature in that long thing that might apply to what he was complaining about. So it's very interesting. This city has had a terrific focus on just conflict of interest, when I think there might be other things that violate what we'd say is a high ethical standard, which is to create some kind of respect for the organization, especially the city council and the city itself. Anyhow, so I think we're done with that part right now, but Mr. Neal may return, as far as we know, with some,
Well, if you want to move on to item 3, with the understanding that you may come back item 2.
yeah, sure. Well, no, you mean item 4? Because 2 is the approval of the minutes. We did approve the minutes, did we approve? We approved the minutes, okay.
So,
But that's on
we're
public
talking
record, right?
about-
Thank you.
We're
But,
talking about the item 3 was suggested by me
Mhm.
to give Mr. Dexter, if he wanted to, a chance to come to the
right,
Item 3 was suggested by me specifically to give Mr. Dexter a chance to come to the meeting and say whatever he wanted to say.
yeah,
I wasn't sure if he was satisfied just with his email that he is recusing, or if he wanted to come here and say something. So item 3 really was designed for that as well as anything else. So if, I think, we'll know very quickly if Attorney Jacobson is available and can come. So perhaps it would be best just to wait until she comes.
or, well, we could look at what items face us next. Could we do
Well,
that?
you could move to, we could move, could move to 4 with the understanding you're going to come back to 3. You
Right.
could do that if you want. It's your
That
your
doesn't
choice.
bother you? That's okay with you? You're all fine with that? Yeah.
I have no objection. I have no objection to it. However, I'm not going to participate in any decision-making. Even decisions on procedure might have some impact on how this
Right,
complaint
okay.
gets dealt with, so I'll abstain from any
Any discussion?
voting or discussion.
So maybe, are we in 4 then?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to try to describe to you is what I think can be done today and cannot be done today.
Okay.
You have a quorum of 3, or we have 4 here, but you have 3 voting members, which means that anything you do would have to be done unanimously today.
That was a question that I raised, that
Yes.
Calvin raised too.
Yeah,
I think.
you would have, I think everything should be done unanimously. There really are 2 things to do. First, do you have a verified complaint? Determine whether you have a verified complaint. If the answer to that is yes, then you move to consideration of whether you want to do an investigation. If the answer to that is yes, then you should stop. Because at that point, if you decide to do an investigation, then you have to give notice to Alder Ryan
Right.
before you do an investigation.
And
So that's as far as you can go today.
Right. And that's not accomplished by just talking to Alder Ryan, who is here, but that's accomplished by Mary Gady sending her something, is that right?
Right. Alder Ryan has to be given a copy of the complaint, and that's as far as you can go before the investigation.
But doesn't Alder Ryan have a copy of the complaint at this point?
But it requires that you do that in the procedure. So
Again.
I recommend that you don't go further than that today.
Right, okay.
The other thing that is possible, I think, is that you might, if you choose to, and if it's of interest to you, invite Alder Ryan and Mr. Harris to weigh in on the question of should an investigation occur, on that question alone. You could do that or not do it. But as far as you can go today, in my opinion, is
Deciding on this.
deciding whether you're going to investigate or
Right.
not.
And without knowing, investigation take a lot of forms, and that's not decided by deciding to do an investigation.
The way I would structure this is, if you decide to investigate, and the ordinance gives somewhat conflicting direction on that.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that, but if you
Yeah.
decide to investigate, then we would have a second meeting,
Yeah.
and the meeting would consist of how you're going to do it, who's
Yeah.
going to do it, and so forth.
Yeah,
And then you get that done, and then there's a third meeting to deliberate, which would be done in closed session. So Attorney Jacobson is here. If
Right.
you want to,
Right.
I think
Do you
if you want to move back to item 3, I
right.
think that would be
Is
appropriate.
Is that all right? It's acceptable, and move back to item 3.
Yeah.
Okay, hello? Do you want to, a question has been raised about what the limitations are in city ordinance dealing with recusing oneself. And the question is, does the ordinance tell us that it's inappropriate to recuse yourself for reasons other than financial gain?
The ordinances do not address recusals, they address voting abstentions. So Chapter 2.16 of the council rules is applicable to the council meeting as a body and its standing committees and subcommittees. So I'm not sure those rules even apply to the meeting of the ethics board. But in the council rules is a rule about abstentions. And so if you're required to vote as an elected official, and if you refuse to vote on a particular issue, you note for the clerk that you're abstaining from voting, but you have to state on the record whether it's personal or financial. without going into any further
Details.
explanation, although people do offer explanations, and that's fine, but it can be personal because they can't be unbiased in their vote, or they have a connection, let's say, or it can be financial, like you're voting on a contract, to give someone a contract, let's say, and that's
Right.
your employer, for
Right.
instance.
Yeah,
So
which-
that it does not address recusals. Those are a little more difficult to evaluate because they're ethical dilemmas, and so you have to look at all of the facts and evaluate each situation a little bit differently as to whether or not the person should recuse themselves. But I've always taken the position that at the end of the day, it's up to each individual to decide to weigh for themselves whether or not they should recuse themselves, and they're not obligated to give you a reason. And if they want advice, they can seek advice in advance from our office about whether they should recuse themselves. But again, we just offer that advice. They don't have to follow it necessarily. We just help them evaluate what's important and coming to a determination.
Well, thank you. Is that explanation, do you have any questions?
I thank you very much for that explanation. That does clarify things. It does not change my decision. I think what you said earlier, Doug, we are an ethics board, and we need to perhaps hold ourselves to a higher ethical standard. And I note that the declaration of policy in the ordinance is that we are to strive to improve the quality and integrity of public service, promote, strengthen, and nurture the faith and confidence of the citizens of this community in their public officials and employees. And for that reason, I stand by my decision.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate you. Yeah,
You're welcome. Thank you.
all right. So, I mean, is everybody clear that, are we ready to move on to, are we finished with item 4?
Why don't you move to 4 and see if anyone has anything else that they would like to discuss that's captured within item 4.
Right.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, whatever you want, it's your choice, whatever you want to do.
So, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll move item 4. Anything you want to discuss, Dean, with regard to procedure or structure, authority, all that kind of thing, dealing with this case?
Well, just as we talk a little bit about procedure, if we, and kind of going back to the last discussion we were having, is that if we decide that there's a verified complaint today and we're looking at moving towards investigation, can we even today at this point start to discuss the scope of that investigation or what we would like to see as part of that investigation?
Yeah.
My recommendation would be to hold that for your next meeting, which,
A discussion of the nature of it,
how
yeah.
if you decide you're going to investigate, if you get to that point today, then you provide notice, just as it says, and then I recommend that you come back for a second meeting to decide how you're going to do that, who's going to do it, and so forth. Hopefully then, that would allow people to bring the information back to see if there's probable cause for a hearing and so forth. So it would be good to see if we can, we could have one meeting, but my goal is no more than 3, if you go that far even. It's your call.
Right, but part of that investigation could be having additional meetings to do that investigation, correct? As the statute talks about subpoenas. Part of my question, whether we can ask for a written answer or some sort of written responses from the parties at issue here. But that would all be discussed at the next meeting then, is my understanding.
I think that's best. It's a little, it's a little tedious and cumbersome, but
Okay.
to follow, in an ethics situation, to follow the procedure as strictly as possible, I think is best.
So we basically, what we face now is, well, number one, we have to, if we start in, I guess that's right, that's the next item.
If you want to move on to item
So-
5, excuse me.
Well, just back on item 4, as we have four members of the board right now, I think that would be the mayor would be allowed to appoint somebody. If they did that, they would just, I assume, come in on this meeting, at the committee meeting, whenever they did get appointed?
They can, yes, the mayor, the council can make a decision as to whether it wants to
Appointed
appoint someone. They're going to have to appoint someone at some stage, perhaps, but by the next meeting, but they don't have to do that. The council may decide, I have no knowledge of what they would do, but they may decide that best not to choose replacements or a replacement at this point, when there's a complaint out there. Better to have the people who were on the board before the complaint finish it up for, kind of obvious reasons. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, and then I have nothing further on item number 4 then.
So then our next item is to do number 5, is the complaint a verified complaint? And that's an opinion. Verified complaint does puzzle me a little bit, but sounds to me like it has to be properly presented. It looks like reading the ordinance, we could still say, even after we find the complaint is a verified complaint, we could still say it was done for harassment, even a verified. So I don't think we're going very far by saying it's a verified complaint. Is there any issue with that?
Sure, I guess I look at it just sort of from my background in legal, that whether it's stated a claim, which relief could be granted essentially, it's kind of that very, very basic, does it assert a claim underneath the code of ethics? And so when I'm looking at that, I think that it's a verified complaint, it's notarized, it has evidence through affidavits attached to it. And then looking at the code of ethics, I think under 2.03030, under standards of conduct, we would be looking under J.
2.03030,
Is the one that I noted specifically that it would be fit under the city or the ordinance for the code of ethics for public officials.
And that, in fact, is the only item mentioned in the complaint.
Yes.
So it's clear that the complainant is complaining about a violation of that particular standard and not others.
And then we're in a position that we find a violation of some other standard, we can add that. That's what it seems the code says,
Yes?
if we do that.
Yes,
I think
through our
that's not-
investigation.
Right. I just want to make sure we know what we can do with. So, yeah, your view is that, I mean, it does, as far as verified complaint, it just meets basic standards for what.
Yes, and that's, I guess, if we're, the discussion, I don't know if I have to move to
Yeah.
admit it as a verified complaint?
Yeah,
You have to make a decision as to whether it's a verified complaint. That should be done by motion and
Right.
vote.
so I entertain any motion to either for or against that?
And I would so move.
Okay,
I support the motion.
okay,
I think it's a verified,
Okay.
I think it's a verified complaint based on
So-
everything Attorney Voss said.
okay. So all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
And all those, I better, do I say aye?
Yeah.
I better say aye.
You should,
Aye.
you
Don't you
should,
think that would help?
Yes.
Thank you. It would help if I said aye, okay. And those against, well, that's it. We don't need to do any more
No.
because that's it. Okay, so it's a verified complaint, which takes us to another step, which is item 6, I think. Possible discussion on whether an investigation should occur. Okay. And in talking to Ted this morning, I would say that there are at least two possibilities. One is we can go forward with an investigation. I think that's, if we think there is probable cause, at least what is
No,
mentioned. What? Go ahead.
First is the investigation, and then we determine whether there's probable cause to
Right.
move forward.
Yeah, but I thought to go to investigation, we have to think that at least what is alleged could violate. So you
That
don't
is
read
not my understanding. I think that once we find that that's a verified complaint, we can continue, we can choose to do investigation.
If we choose.
Uh,
Yes.
If I may direct you to something in the ordinance, that the drafting probably is not the greatest. And so I would like to tell you the issue so that you have an understanding of it. If you take a look at 2.03060,
060, there we go.
does everybody have a copy of it? Because you really need to look at it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir,
I'm pulling it up right now. What is the number again?
06203, 060.
Right there, where I got it marked.
Okay.
You got it marked right here?
No, where my thumb was.
Right here? Oh, where your thumb was.
Hang on.
Okay,
Okay, this is the ordinance, so you can find your way through it.
Items,
So if you look at, everybody should look at 2.03.060, and when everybody has it, please let me know.
Yes.
Mr. Mason, do you have it? Okay. If you look at sub A, and you look at the last two sentences, that's where I'd want to direct you first. It says, if the board determines that the verified complaint alleges facts sufficient to constitute a violation of this chapter, it may make an investigation with respect to any alleged violation, okay? That seems to give you discretion.
yeah,
However, then we go to B, and this is the drafting
right.
issue.
Right.
It says, the board shall investigate any complaint properly filed with it.
Thank you very much.
And so
Yeah, but that just tells you you have to do that.
it does seem to say that, and there's a general rule of law followed quite faithfully by the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which is probably the best law source here, which is that the specific controls the general. And so if you have a mandatory, a may and a mandatory, the
Right.
mandatory controls.
Then the mandatory takes over.
My interpretation of what was going on here is they were talking about whether perhaps the complaint was brought for harassment purposes, and that's why they have the may in there. But you have the problem where it says you may make an investigation, and then the very, almost the next sentence tells you you have
You have
to.
to, yeah.
So my advice is that we have a lawyer on the board, but it is very basic rule of law that the specific controls the general.
Yeah. So the issue is that at this point, we have to make an investigation? Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think that
really,
the mandate of it is that we shall investigate.
yeah. So, but that, I see, then we can't do any, essentially, that takes care, we
Well,
don't
you-
need to vote on it.
I think you should vote, definitely,
Okay,
and-
just to be careful,
yes.
that we vote to
Yeah.
do an investigation, but then we stop there, right? Because,
Yeah.
because Alderperson Ryan has to be informed.
So you
can't-
can make that part of one motion,
What,
that there will be an investigation and notice will be provided to Alder Ryan
right,
about that there's, the complaint will be provided to her per the ordinance.
right.
So you can do that in two motions
Yeah,
or
I-
one.
Like that?
Sure, and I will move.
Okay. Are you happy with that, Brian? Is that,
So the motion is to proceed with saying we're going to go forward with an investigation and provide Alder Ryan with notice of our intent to proceed with an investigation. Is that?
Actually,
that's it exactly.
and that's
That
fine,
was very nice.
and that's fine, that's fine, but the ordinance says that you need to provide her with a copy of the complaint.
With a copy of the complaint, okay.
Okay.
So we'll provide Alder Ryan with notice of the complaint and notice of the planned investigation.
Right.
It's perfectly fine to give her more information than is required.
Okay,
That's
I just want to make sure
perfectly
I'm clear about, because something was hard to track all that
All right,
back and forth.
Right.
Okay, then I support Attorney Voss's two motions.
fine. Would you restate your motion perhaps?
Yes, I would move to investigate as well as provide Alderperson Ryan notice of the complaint as well as the investigation.
I support.
Okay, then I'll say aye too.
Aye.
So all
those
in favor?
Aye.
And all against. And this creates at this point no prejudice, is there, that we're simply investigating, we're looking at, to see what this stands up.
Yeah, you're going to try to learn the facts.
Right.
That's really
Pretty
all you
much-
said.
Pretty much what I want to do, that I don't want to just have it in front of me and not look at it and not hear from the parties involved. But right at this point, we're just deciding to do investigation, so I would definitely agree with that. So that, all in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
and all opposed, and no, I mean, that's it.
So does that,
I meant to say aye. Go ahead.
go ahead.
I think we're done then, aren't we, at this point?
I think that you should schedule your next meeting if you
Right,
can.
right, that's what I meant, we're done in terms of what we're going to do today.
Could I ask, before we move on to scheduling our meeting, and
You, let me say this. You did put in we did have in the agenda that you could ask for information if you want, but I think that's more appropriate as the next one. So I think all that needs to be done now, or should be done really, is to schedule the next meeting.
Yeah,
And before we do that, I want to make sure that you all understand, if you can't make the meeting, you need to tell everybody, because you can't, unless you all come, there's no meeting.
right,
Yes.
there's no meeting, yeah.
which, thank you for that, which gets at my question. Does our acting chair or a member of this committee need to notify the mayor in writing of our desire to have Ms. Tao's seat replaced as quick as possible?
I
think we can do that. I mean, you want to do that as a motion. I mean, I understand that you would just as soon see this person, I don't think there's a problem with the person getting appointed. It's just at this point, it might not be useful for that, what you were saying, to be involved in the particular case because they don't have the background.
May I suggest that that doesn't necessarily have to be a committee action, that if any of you three have thoughts that you want to express to the mayor,
Go right ahead.
that you go right ahead
Yeah,
and see what that does.
okay. Okay, well, thank
I
you.
mean, you could
But you're-
ask for it as a group, or you could do
Right.
it separately, and either one would be, in my view, fine.
I'm curious of the committee, my fellow committee members' opinion. We rapidly went from what I thought was five at the start of today to now we're down to three.
Right.
And I'd be curious to know your individual opinions if you want to proceed with just the three of us. I have confidence in you, I have confidence in the attorney that the city has hired, but nevertheless, I'd be curious to know your opinion if you're willing to share.
I do think that we're quite small, so I think that if the mayor would appoint another member, I think that would be helpful. At the same time, I have the confidence in us three, I guess. I get concerned because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And with three of us, we've just gone really small for this committee meeting, but I would be fine either way, whatever the decision was from essentially the mayor and then the city council approves it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess similarly, I didn't have I mean, I thought, well, it's too bad, but right now we can do that and we'll at least follow the case. But I would be very interested in having an additional member, although I think at this point it would be better for that member to show up for whatever continuing things we do rather than this case.
I point out that I think it may take a while
Right.
to get somebody
Right,
appointed,
right.
so that would,
Okay.
So
that
we
would
could
delay the
start- we could
proceedings
start
for
early.
everyone.
So, yeah, I mean, if we want, we can act as do you want to act as a committee? Do you want a motion that I mean, I can be happy to go to see the mayor bug her about.
If it does take a while, I guess at that point, it just would seem more appropriate for us just to continue, rather than getting somebody appointed late. And so I think really, I'm not sure if that's a decision that really we can make besides just the request. And obviously, because that's the mayor with the approval of city council.
Since it's not, clearly an action item on the agenda, perhaps
I can
we
do
could,
this.
it could be put on for the next agenda, but in the meantime, of
Meantime.
course, you're all free to express
Right.
whatever opinions you want to express
Sure.
to the council.
Sure.
Okay.
It's helpful to know your guys'
When do you
opinion,
guys
because
have-
I'm very curious, because it's suddenly a very slim committee, and for all the reasons you lift up, that's where my concerns really come in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. No,
Yeah.
that's very helpful.
I make a motion to adjourn
Oh,
the meeting.
Can we schedule a meeting?
Oh, yeah,
first?
that's
Oh,
right,
yeah,
sorry.
better schedule a meeting, yeah. So, can we do this fairly rapidly? Is there?
I have,
Is there-
I have a trial next week, that's the only problem right now.
Okay.
Is there any specific 10-day notice or anything like that that needs to be in the, according to the code? Okay.
Okay.
I think that my off-the-cuff opinion is that this meeting, like any public meeting, would need 48 hours of notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absent an emergency where it could be shorter.
Right.
So, I think it would be a good idea to send the agenda out, 4 or 5 days, a week in advance if you can, so
Yeah.
you can, have your thoughts.
I assumed, did you help with the last agenda, and you'd be
I did.
helping with the future ones?
I will.
And would that, with you having a trial next week, would it be within, is 2 weeks from now too early for
Oh,
that?
yes, and of course, I'm hoping to settle that case. But I can't count on it. So I could certainly find time to work on the agenda with the vice chair next week. But to be safe, the meeting, well, let me just give you some times. I could be here Monday, the January 24th. I could be here on the 26th.
Morning or afternoon on both of those dates, or is there?
Afternoon would be much better on the
Because-
26th.
Because he's got to travel.
The 24th, yeah, I mean, if you give me, yeah.
24th,
This is
26th?
for me, I'm working and you are volunteering, so I want to
Well,
defer to
some-
you.
In my case, yeah, I'm volunteering.
So Monday or Wednesday are best for me, but we can keep looking if that doesn't work.
Do they-
I could do a
excuse me.
January, go ahead, yeah.
I've got the council chambers calendar open here because you want to have
Yes.
it in this. And Monday, the 24th is available all day. The 26th, there's only a period of time between 4 and 5:15 that is showing that it's even open, this room. So,
Couldn't we do it in a different room if the date was better?
well, you can't do,
Oh, video, okay,
yeah.
right, I understand, okay.
I could do
Well,
the January 24th at 1, if that would work with everybody's
Yeah.
calendar.
Is that Brian? Is that,
I can do the 24th at 1.
otherwise, the 27th, the whole afternoon, well, most of the afternoon is available. But, no, Monday's the best day
Ted's not-
for being open.
Monday and Thursday, I could do Thursday as well, looks like,
okay, 27th,
if that's
all right.
better.
So what?
The 27th would be better for me in the afternoon, if we
Okay,
could do
What
that.
time is that, Mary? Is it?
It's showing right now, although it says there's a trial there from, looks like
Yeah.
2 to 4, but those don't always happen. I'd have to check with the municipal court clerk to see if that trial is actually taking place. Otherwise, starting at 4 o'clock, it's open the rest of the day.
Well, how does that affect you?
The second meeting may take a while. Would it be helpful if the meeting was on the 24th, was later in the day?
Yeah.
I
otherwise,
only have-
Friday, the 28th is open all day as well.
The 24th, I only have available between 1 and 3.
Okay.
Okay.
Or the 28th, I have any time in the afternoon available.
And I'm booked on the 28th. I think 1 to 3 should be enough, really.
On Monday, the 24th?
That would be enough, if that's okay with the three of you.
This is the 24th?
Yeah, between 1 and 3, I think. would be-
24th, 1 to 3 is our next meeting? I'm good with that.
It's always good to have somebody who needs the meeting to end. That helps in every meeting.
So true.
Right. Okay, then. We're settled on that right now, then.
Yep.
The
And-
next meeting will be
No.
Monday, the 24th, from
booking
1 to 3.
Okay.
And then you want to adjourn? Do you want
I remake my motion to adjourn.
to, okay.
I would second.
And then all those in favor, I guess, get up and leave.
Aye.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you. You better have to.